In September of 1997, my guest was involved in a life-threatening and life-changing car accident. She was ejected out of the passenger window and sustained obvious head injuries, a broken neck, in 2 places, a broken pelvis, knee, and broken toes. Now, that was a heck of a bad accident. Then in July of 1988, with the same driver, had another accident, and her right hip and femur was crushed, and she was in a wheelchair for over a year. Her book that she has written takes us through the journey of how she healed and what she discovered and what she became in the process. Now, interestingly enough, this morning we read from our 2 books, and both of them dealt with adversity. Both of them dealt with, regardless of the adversity, you still can make it through. And my guest this morning is a shining example of that. She is Kiamesha Harrison, and her book is Coming Out of Hiding. Kiamesha, good morning to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley.
Good morning.
Well, it is good to have. Last week we were supposed to round together and get together and meet up and join up, but we got snowed out.
Yes. When you just said 9 degrees, oh my goodness.
Yeah, 9, yes, 9, and feels like -9. So.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I can only imagine. So I guess I feel bad because it's only 55 here this morning, and I'm freezing.
Right, 55 in Texas is cold. Because
yes,
I have an aunt that lives down in that Missouri City, Houston area, and so.
Oh really?
Yeah,
that's not that far from me. It's like
really?
3 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll have to share their information with you. Maybe you all can hook up at some point. But yes, my mother's sister, she lives down in Missouri City. Now, I guess they call it Mo City, or however they call it, whatever they call it down there. But I know it's Missouri City.
I'm north. I'm like going toward the Dallas area.
Okay. Well, I
actually used to live down in Missouri City, though, like in that vicinity, but they flood down there.
Oh, yeah. And
when I came here to visit and I saw that flood water, I said, the only way I can be here is when I am not in the path of that. So I don't flood. Everybody evacuates to me. I don't go down there. So.
Texas is an interesting state because it's so big. And I've been to the major cities in Texas. I've been to Dallas. I've been to Houston. I've been to San Antonio. Matter of fact, I did my Air Force training in San Antonio over at Lackland Air Force Base. And I've been to Dallas. Okay. I've been to Dallas on business, and I've been to Houston on business. And the funny thing to me, and I always tell people about Dallas because I've traveled the country, and each state I go to, I have something different that I remember it by. But the thing I always remember Texas by is, in Texas, if you ride your highways, you could be in Dallas, and they'll have a sign for Houston that makes it look like it's the next exit. And it's 4 hours away.
Yes, I've been here since my second accident. Like shortly after I came here, my mother moved here because I'm actually from upstate New York.
Okay.
And we lived I grew up in Sullivan County, up there by the, I'm not sure. I know a lot of people don't know where it is, but it's not that far from Binghamton.
Okay.
And after my accident, my mother moved here, and she felt that it would be better for me to be kind of close to family because I went to the Atlanta area to do the first part of my recovery.
Okay. And I love Atlanta,
and then I came here, and it's baffling to me that you can be on the road for hours and still be in Texas.
And still be in the, that's what I'm talking about. It's still be in the same state. That you're in the same, right. That's my point. That they
even tell you that it's like a journey just to get out of Texas. It could take almost like a full day or so just to get out of our state. It's huge.
It is. For those of you who have never been to Texas, you just cannot get an appreciation for what Kiamesha and I are talking about unless you've been there. And like I said, for me, I think I was in Dallas, and I'm on the highway, and I see the sign says Houston. I'm like, Dallas and Houston are not that far apart. Dallas and Houston about as far as from where I am in New Jersey to Washington, D.C. That's about 250 miles, about a 4-hour drive.
Yeah,
But you would never know it.
Flashing the sign.
Right. You would never know it based on the way the sign on the highway looks. You would think it's like a couple towns over. But that was always the thing that was fun for me in Texas. And but it's just everything is big in Texas. They mean that. I mean, they really do. It's like the state is the biggest in the union. It's right in the center. I mean, people in Texas honestly believe like that is like the heaven on earth because it sits in the center of the United States. I think if you look on the globe, Texas sits in the center of the globe where the United States is related. So Texas people, those who originated from or are born in Texas, they really do believe that Texas is the center of the earth and that the world revolves around them.
That is an understatement. It is. And you know what's really interesting is that you can meet locals and tell them where you're from, and they frown their nose up. Oh, and I'm like,
that's right.
I'm like, you've been there? And you're like, oh, no, not at all.
I am not exaggerating. It's true. She is not exaggerating. I've been to Texas. I've spent some time in Texas, and that's exactly the attitude. And they really, the Texans, born-bred Texans, truly believe that that is the center of the world, and the world revolves around them.
And they won't leave.
No.
I've met people who born, raised, and will never go to another state. And I'm like, well, you know, not everybody gets hurricanes. So that's our winters, our hurricane season.
That's right.
And I think I came here to visit my mother during Tropical Storm Allison, which I thought was a joke because it wasn't even a full-fledged hurricane. And I remember turning on the television and watching one of the police officers kayak down the freeway.
Right.
And I remember packing all my stuff that day. I'm like, I think it's time for me to go. I was like, that's not natural. It's seriously something out of a movie. You know, you see waves on the freeway. And I'm like, that's just not natural. That doesn't happen. And it just really spooked me. But, you know, all of my doctors are here. And when I got here, my two oldest children were really small. Now I feel old. And, and then the more time went by and the more surgeries that I had, it just seemed like I needed to stay here. And then after I got here, my whole family seemed it was like a pilgrimage. My mother was here, then my cousins, my father, my sister, my grandmother, some aunts. There's like 35 of us here now.
Oh, good for you. At least you're surrounded by family.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually 40 minutes from my family, and that's because they all live in a flood zone.
Okay. Yeah. So you're making sure you stay away from that flood zone. I see.
Oh, yeah. I'm on an evacuation route. I'll tell you.
Oh, no, I'm not getting in that flood zone.
You know, the area that I sit in, I'm like right there. I'm central to 3 different freeways. I can get in and out of here with no problem.
I know, that's right. Well, I tell you what.
But it's not bad. I really have to say that. It's not that bad. And the medical care I've gotten since I've been here is just beautiful.
Well, I'm going to share some information with the listening audience, and when we come out, we're going to start into all of that because did the book came, I'm assuming, after all your accidents, or was it before the accidents?
No, it came after.
Okay.
I was sitting in a wheelchair, and I have to actually my personal editor and this motivational speaker is my godfather.
Okay.
And it was after my second accident and after one of my most brutal surgeries. And I've actually been writing since I was young, and he knew that. And I remember it was the first time I spoke to him since everything happened. And he called me, and he said, so, you know, what have you been doing with your writing? I was like, oh, nothing. How do I have time? And he got quiet, and he said, you know, that's such a waste. And I remember hanging up from him, and I'm like, he is the last person I ever wanted to disappoint.
Right.
And, you know, when you go through something, especially when you decide to have a full-fledged pity party, like I was doing.
Right. And that's why and when we come back from the break, I'm going to touch on it. Whenever you gave the response, I just don't have the time. And I know why he got quiet and said it's such a waste.
I know, because, he really thought about it. He's like, you're sitting there, you're not doing it.
Right, exactly. Because that's exactly what went through my mind. Like, hold up. I don't have any time.
Right. I mean, you know, one thing I really learned about myself just in the journey of writing, and I do write for other people,
right,
anonymously, you know, just to help people get through their own journeys, is that it's so easy to get caught up in self-pity. And that's just something I just thought that I was not capable of self-pity. I was always so upbeat and so outgoing. And
Right.
the first accident, I had it in New York, in Manhattan, actually. And I was surrounded by my church family, my actual biological family.
Uh-huh.
And I was so motivated. I was so pumped up. My recovery was great. And then when I had the second accident, we were all the way down in Georgia, and I didn't have anybody there.
Right.
And, ultimately the relationship ended between me and the driver. And he went back to New York and left me and the children in Georgia.
Wow.
And immediately my first reaction was to become extraordinarily introverted, which is still not me.
Right.
It just took me to a different place, and the recovery was long and hard, and, ultimately that's how I ended up here. But, when things happen to you, you just always, you always have this picture in your head, well, that wouldn't happen to me. I wouldn't do that. Well, it's amazing what pain will do.
Yes. And,
not just physical pain, but emotional pain.
Absolutely. I'm going to share some information with the audience, and we're going to come back and we're going to get into all of that in the next 45 minutes. So don't you dare move. Listening audience, get on every last one of your social media sites. Now, I'm not going to name them and take the time to name all of them, but you know what I'm talking about. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, so forth and so on. And tell them to tune in to gobrave.org right now, because I have Kiamesha Harrison on the line, and we're going to be talking about her book, Coming Out of Hiding, as well as her recovery and the accident and everything, because I'm just sitting there like blown away at all the various body parts and everything that was broken. And so when you start talking about pain, again, that's like in my wild imagination. And you're right. None of us know what we would do in any certain situation. In the first hour, I always kick the show off reading out of two books. One of the books is called What Can Happen When We Pray, and the other one is by Iyanla Vanzant, Until Today. And both of them were dealing with adversity. The one out of What Can Happen When We Pray, the title for today was Please Send Somebody Else, or Please Send Someone Else. And then the one out of Iyanla's book was Life Will Work for Me When I Realize Trouble Comes to Pass, Not Stay. And now as we get into your interview, that dovetails with both of those readings. So as soon as I share this information with the listening audience, we're going to jump right into that. So those of you, get on your sites. Let everybody know that Kiamesha's on the air with me.
Yeah, salad on Saturday, fruit on Friday, throw-a-ball Thursday. Water Wednesday, touch your toes Tuesday, let's move Monday, swap us next Sunday.
60 minutes of physical activity a day and eating well can help get your child healthy. So keep them active and eating well every day. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov. That's letsmove.gov. A message from USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
Hey, parents of children with asthma, here's another hit from the Breathe Easies.
Don't smoke in the house. Don't smoke in the house. Don't smoke around the kids in the house. Don't smoke in the car. Don't smoke in the house.
Don't break my heart with your secondhand smoke in the kids and get triggered the asthma.
Preventing asthma attacks can be as simple as making your home and car smoke-free zones. For more Breathe Easy tips to help stop asthma attacks, go to noattacks.org. Brought to you by the EPA and the Ad Council.
The Reading Circle on WP 88.7 FM.
Welcome back to an extended version or a doubleheader version of the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. And we're continuing on, as I said, with a doubleheader. My guest is Kiamesha Harrison. And you heard whenever I was introducing her, which was a different introduction. And it's really, like, for me, dramatic. Like, just listening. And I'm going to go back to that again. If you didn't catch it in the beginning, in 1997, Kiamesha was involved in a life-threatening and life-changing car accident. She was ejected out of the passenger window and sustained head injuries, broken neck in 2 places, broken pelvis, broken knee, and broken toes. Then the next year, in July of 1998, had another accident. And her right hip, her femur were both crushed, and she was in a wheelchair for almost a year. That's why going back whenever she said, I don't have any time, I was like, what? You're sitting in a wheelchair. What are you doing in there? I don't know what you're doing or may not be doing. But I would think if anything you had, it would be time. So I'm sure your mentor or your godfather or your whoever, your encourager, your motivational speaker, I'm sure when you made that statement, the same thing popped through his head that popped through mine. Time is the one thing you do have. So, so she has written a book, and that's what we're going to be talking about, because the book takes you through her journey to heal, her journey of discovery, and what she became in that process. And as I said earlier, if we heard me in the reading of the two books, that's exactly what they were talking about, that the adversity makes you stronger, that the adversity you think is something that was negative. As it turns out, it comes out to be a positive. So during that time, she wrote a book called Coming Out of Hiding. And you heard Kiamesha say, am I saying it right? Is it Kiamesha or Kiamesha? How do you say it?
Kiamesha.
Kiamesha, okay. So during that time, Kiamesha wrote a book, and she said she always loved writing, even as a child. And again, her motivational speaker, her godfather, her mentor, kind of came back and said, well, what are you doing with your writing? And that's kind of where we are, what we've been talking about, a lot of things about Texas. Talk to me a little bit about, like, what was going on, like, prior to the accident, how things were going, because life has a way of just out of the blue.
That is an understatement. That is definitely an understatement. Actually, I went to college in Georgia, and I decided to go home. And, just like most young people who want to be rebellious, I decided early that I wanted to get married and have a baby. And instead of, taking college all the way and, doing other things, I decided to settle down and become someone's wife. I thought that's what, my next journey was, because, of course, at 20 years old, my heart was saying I wanted to do one thing, and it made more sense than what my head said. And,
I understand.
I went home and I got married, and I had 2 kids by the time I had my first accident. And it's really interesting, because at the time I thought that I was in a good place. Even though, my heart was pulling me in a different direction and different things were going on, I did have a great church family. My entire family is from New York and, lived in the area. So it just seemed right. Like I overlooked other things in order to convince myself to be there. And I don't remember my accident at all, which is a great thing, because I heard it was horrific.
Right.
And we were supposed to be going to New Jersey to go shopping, but I'm not really sure why. We were actually going toward further into Manhattan at the time, and a cab hit our car. And I got ejected out the side window of a minivan. And it's so crazy, because I woke up so excited.
Wow.
I was asleep for like 3 days. And when I came to, I was excited. I was okay. And I think just the realization that I was still here just helped me. My recovery when I had the first accident was amazing.
Right.
I had my church family. I had my whole family there. And, the hospital gave me a nurse that came and see me every day. I had a home attendant. So I was just surrounded by people who wanted to watch me get better. And that helped a lot. But, when I really, like in retrospect, especially when I started writing the book, I realized that mentally I wasn't in a good place. I wasn't in a good place before the accident. I was reflecting on the decisions that I made in many areas of my life. And I don't like the person I was becoming. It was fake. On the outside, everything seemed like it was okay, but
right.
I do remember maybe about 2 nights before the accident, I remember praying that I was just tired of being mommy. I was tired of being wife. I just wanted to go off someplace and be myself. I remember that clear as day, and that's just not me. The level of care and concern I have for my, the family I built,
right,
is beyond me. And I think at the time I was just starting to become really selfish and just, I just wasn't where I should have been. My heart wasn't right. And after my accident, I was so excited when they woke me up and told me that I was going to live and that I could walk. I'm like, okay, awesome.
Right.
So, let's get this going. I was okay walking around in a halo and having to go to church that way. It didn't bother me, because I'm like, okay, I'm still breathing.
Absolutely.
And, but the relationship at home was falling apart. And I don't know if, still to this day, me and the driver can't have a functional conversation about it. And,
Right.
I understand what guilt will do to a person. And quite frankly, it really doesn't matter to me anymore, just, the things that happen surrounding it. But like 11 months later, we moved down to the Georgia area, like I said. And when we had the second accident, I didn't have that safety net anymore. My church wasn't there. My family wasn't there. I basically was, on my own. And it was long and hard. And I truly believe that that's why I was in that wheelchair for, almost a year, because I just could not get my mind around my life changing again. Like the first thing happens,
Right.
you take a deep breath, I'm like, okay, I'll get through it. Then it happens again. This is getting really old now. So what do I do?
Right.
And I was still trying to recover. And then by that time, I had already had 2 children.
Right.
They don't understand that mommy can't get down the stairs.
Absolutely.
Or, they understand somebody's supposed to take care of me and she's not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And but I will say, my 2 oldest children, who are now 20 and 18, they took better care of me than I did of them. And in many ways, I'm ashamed of that. But at the same time, I do believe that that's what shaped my relationship with them.
Right.
It's just seeing, they saw me pushing through it, getting better, and every day I got stronger. And like you mentioned, when I got here to Texas, I've had a total of 36 surgeries.
Wow.
I amputated my femur. I've had 2 total hip replacements. And it has been a long journey. And unfortunately, just due to trauma, I have a lot of memory loss, which is, for a long time I dwelled on it, but I decided I was just going to create new memories. Like with my son, he's 18 now, and I can't remember anything about him before he turned 4.
Right.
Just nothing. It's just like not there. And rather than dwelling on it, I found a way to get around it.
Right.
And I know when I was younger, for some reason I always have battled, a little bit mild depression. And I do think it's hereditary. My family's been through a lot. And writing always gave me a safety. I could rip it up, burn it, erase it, but I knew I got it out. And it always made me feel better.
Right.
And just when, they decided they were putting me back in a wheelchair, I think my mind kind of paralyzed me. Because it was like, well, I've already been through that part, and I didn't like that part. Like with the first one, I can get up and walk around. But when your freedom is gone,
Right.
Your mind wraps around that in, all of your insecurities, all your fear, all of your, all your doubt, all that comes out when you feel like you have nothing left.
Right.
Wow. One
Wow.
thing that, because I'm actually writing a project that it's just been a long time in the making, based on a support group that I'm in here for people with neuropathy and nerve damage who have to go through the constant surgeries and taking all the medication. And just something that we've all universally said is that pain, it does more to you than anything else.
Right.
Because of the fact that it doesn't necessarily have to be, something anybody sees. It could be, it's hiding there, and it's waiting for you to figure out how to deal with it. And if you're not in a good place, and if you're not surrounded by people who are going to push you, and I mean push you, not just love you and tell you that everything you think or feel is right. I had to learn that also. I wanted to be around people who were going to keep nodding yes to me and letting me take all the pain medication and wallowing around and sitting in my bed and crying over it. No, that does not help. Pain,
Right.
Pain wraps itself around you and it waits for you to bust out of it, because it doesn't have to be anything anybody sees. Like I said, some of my worst surgeries were things I didn't know were even wrong with me, after it happened. And just, all of the things that you've hidden from all your life, as a kid, start to really present themselves later. One thing that, with the project I'm writing with my pain group is that it's hard to detect pain. People don't necessarily even believe it's there. People will start to think you're hiding behind your injury or you're hiding behind the medication. And I have to admit, you are. But it changes who you are, and
Right.
you've got to have people around you that are going to motivate you to go forward. And writing that, that book did that for me. because, you know, of course I wrote it. I cried through it because it was actually partly, you know, my journal. And when they asked me to revise it, you know, you're doing all the editing,
Right.
waiting for it to get published. It was hard for me because I'm always used to writing it, getting it out, and putting it away. I never went back and reread it
Right.
and took the time to edit and do all those things. And I think the editing part was more emotional for me than writing it initially.
Because you were actually rereading it.
Right. You know,
Right.
going back and looking over, okay, goodness, how did I handle that?
Right.
Oh, that's horrible. You know, or looking at the relationships you've managed to push away,
Right.
who've become, you know, irreparable, or just looking at the things that you accept and the type of things you evolve into in any trauma. It doesn't have to be, you know, a broken bone. It could be a bad relationship. It could be, you know, a bad, you know, not even just a you know, male-female relationship, but between you and your mother, or
Oh, yeah.
you know, and the world around you.
That's right.
And, you know, for me, I didn't accept, you know, especially since I got out of the wheelchair and I was moving around, and I didn't accept that I could get better. It took forever. And the longer it took, the worse I felt. And it was more of a, I'm trying to find a good way for it. It was more reflecting for me. Like I saw more of who I was through my pain. You know, you take a step back at the end of the day when all the lights go out and you're like, oh, God, did I say that to her?
Right.
No, I didn't mean to do that. But then your pride slips in. It's like, no, I'm not going to say sorry. Surely, look at me. I have a right to be upset. You have a right to be angry. And you really don't, you know, because people get through worse. And the more I wrote, and I started doing ghostwriting for other people, you know, because not everybody can come up with the words to describe what they're going through. And the more I wrote for other people, and the more I just continued to write. And I have to say, my godfather, he like put a battery in my back, and that was it. I can't imagine not writing. I have notepads in every drawer of my house. I have the note section of my phone is completely full, and it's just always remembering. For me, words help me. They help me to express myself, and it helps me to get rid of all of that, you know, because the more you swallow your pain and the more you hide it and not address it, it eats away at you. Even, you know, like I said, not even just a car accident. You know, someone hurts you,
Right.
and rather than deal with it, you stuff it away, but you don't realize that it's rotting you from the inside out. And for me, I know talking to a lot of the women in my pain group, and there's like 400 of us now, we all said the same thing, is that until we find an outlet to get it out, it's just going to be there. It doesn't have to be writing. People become creative. I know there's so many amazing women in my pain group, but one of the things that's fascinating to me is that they've all picked up habits that they didn't have before. Like they've become creative in other ways. Like some of them make amazing cakes, or they write, they decorate, they do things that I know for me, like getting through my brain injury, was anything that became repetitive helps me to focus, even now.
Right.
Like it's better for me to do, like I've always gravitated toward jobs that kind of have a, you know, it's like the same thing every day, but a cycle type of thing. And I challenge myself to go further. And I have to just keep doing those things on occasion just to kind of tell myself that, okay, it's okay for me to go through it. There's nothing wrong with being in pain. The wrong comes in how you handle the pain. You know, the wrong comes in when you begin to abuse medication, or you start taking alcohol, or you start, you know, you doing type of illegal drugs, or, you know, just anything. The wrong comes in there. And it is so easy to get lost in it. That's why my book is titled Coming Out of Hiding, is because even my own mother didn't know about some of the experiences that I brought back from college with me. And for me, you know, younger, I always just assumed nobody wanted to hear it anyway.
Right.
You know, you see the journeys other people are going through, and you're like, oh, she's struggling. She doesn't want to hear that. And you find a way to stuff it, and before you know it, you're dragging around trunks of baggage.
Right.
And it's just, you know, you end up so bogged down with other things that nobody sees who you really are anymore. And writing that book tore away layers after layer of things that I had not addressed or things that I just didn't resolve in my life. And the more I looked at my children grow and the more I watched them, because now I actually have 4, instead of just the 2, and the more I watched them and I saw the happiness that was building out of them, the more I realized I don't want to be in pain anymore.
Right. And see,
you know, and
as you were describing all of that, there's a couple of things that I was listening to you. One was the first accident, your mentality or your thinking was, oh my God, this is great. I'm still alive. So even though you were broken, your healing went very quick. And where I'm going with this is really there's a connection between our mental attitude and our physical bodies. And I listened to you, as you said, with the second accident, how are you saying, oh, my God, I don't want to be sick. I don't want to do. I mean, where I'm going, however you said that, what jumped out or leaped out at me was now your attitude is what caused you to heal so slowly the second time. Your attitude the first time helped you heal quickly. But the second time, your attitude is what probably fed into you healing so slowly.
Right.
And you
and
said
that's something. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying you let it. I mean, you said so many important things as you was giving the descriptions, and I'm going to again share some information with the listening audience. And it's ironic of what I'm listening to you because I told you the aunt that I have that lives down in Missouri City. Mm-hmm. She has gone through a horrific accident. It wasn't a car accident. What happened was back in 2000 or 99 or somewhere around there. She and her husband and some friends were riding on one of those horse and buggy carriage rides. And the horse got spooked and just went crazy. It was uncontrolled. The carriage driver could not control the horse. He went on a rampage, and, you know, the cart went up to like a very high speed, like 70, 80, 90 miles an hour because the horse was just out of control. And he ultimately, when it finally stopped, he slammed the carriage into the side of a brick wall, into the side of a building. And my aunt was on the side that hit the wall. So a lot of these same things you're describing happened to you in a car accident, she's experienced from being hit into that wall in the carriage. And I'm sitting here listening to you. A lot of the memory, the brain, she literally had to go back through learning how to do everything over again, how to write, how to walk, how to talk, same type things you were talking about with the brain injury, with the head injury. So you all are not that far apart. You all would definitely be able to relate.
Oh, you know, that is an understatement. And it's crazy because, you know, when you see other people go through it, you say, oh, my goodness, poor her. Shrug it off and you keep going throughout your day. When it's you, you don't have that option. You can't turn it off.
Right.
You know, you can't jump out of the chair. You can't, you know, disguise it with anything else. You can't, like, throw a sheet over your lap and pretend the wheels aren't there.
Right.
You know, it's something that you're faced with every day. And, you know, when they're trying to teach me how to walk, you know, your mind is saying, you know how to do this. What are you doing? You don't need their help. Get up and do it on your own.
Right.
And when that doesn't work out, now your mind is saying, okay, lazy, what are you doing? Why isn't this working? Like, you become harsher on yourself and the people around you. And again, you know, pain turns into, like, it manifests itself in so many different ways. You know, you become so paralyzed by it that you become angry and bitter.
Right.
And a lot of people become introverted. I think that's one of the saddest things that I did experience and that I have been trying to help others get through is just the, you know, forgetting that there is a whole world going on around you. You know, I was so blessed and lucky because I had my children to do that for me.
Right.
You know, and the majority of my surgeries happened like years after the initial accident. Like, I was just in the hospital last week.
Yeah, you were sharing that with me. Whenever I said we got snowed out, and you said, well, you know, it kind of worked in our favor because I would have been calling you from the hospital.
You know, it's so great because the area I live in, I've been going to this hospital since I got here. Everyone knows me, and they take such good care of me, which at first I used to think that was horrible. Like, I walk in, they're like, oh, what's wrong? And it's just so funny because they know how to take care of me. They, you know, all of my surgeons are here, and everything kind of balances itself out. But it took me a while to teach myself that it was okay for me to endure the things that I was trying to do because I'm trying to get to a different place.
Right.
It's okay for me to take a break and try to motivate myself in another way. Because before, you just become so crippled by, like, I sleep, you sleep and you imagine things that happened to you before and everything's glorious. And then you open your eyes, you sit up in the bed and you're like, oh my God, I got to call for help because I got to go to the bathroom and I can't get there on my own. Just the way things start to look. And you're absolutely right. One of the universal things that everyone that I've talked to already, trying to get this project together, and it has been a labor of love, is that we have to be okay with calling out for help. And we have to get out of the habit of making help seem like such a negative thing.
Right.
But we also have got to realize that we have to help ourselves too. And if we're not in a good place, it's not going to happen. I don't care how many physical therapists or how many bottles of medication you take. It's just not going to happen if mentally you're not ready for it to happen. And that's where the support comes in at. And I think that most of my healing has been from the inside out. Just realizing that it's okay to cry. It is okay to acknowledge what's going on. What is not okay is to just sit down and pretend like there's nothing else.
That's correct. Now, I tell you what I've started doing on the show, because usually while I'm also on the social media sites as well, and the author, whoever I'm interviewing as my guest, usually says something that I always now pull out as a quote that I put on Twitter. And you just said something that I just typed it up as you said it. You said, we have to get out of the mindset that help is a negative thing. And I'm getting ready to tag it with your name. I just need to make sure I'm spelling your name right. It's Kiamesha, right?
S-H-A.
Okay, I was spelling it right. And it's Harrison.
Yep.
So I'm posting that right now. We have to get out of the mindset that help is a negative thing. So that's one of the new things I started doing on the show was, as I'm going through the interview and I'm listening, something will leap out at me as a quote that we're going to post on there. So that's the one I have for you so far. If something else pops up, we will do the same thing. I'm going to share some information with the listening audience, and then we're going to come back. I'm sitting here just fascinated listening to you, and I'm fascinated for a few reasons. My guests over the last 2 months or so have really shared, and they've all been female, with the exception of one. I think I had one male, he's a doctor now, that shared a story of adversity. But these stories of adversity are so inspiring, as well as kind of awe-inspiring and mind-blowing, because it's wow, people really do go through and get through. There's a young lady, I don't know if you've ever heard of her or read her book, but she was a guest on my show a few weeks ago. Her name is Nika Beeman, Nika Beeman. And the title of her book is Misdiagnosed: In Search for Dr. House. And for years, doctors could not figure out what was wrong with her. Her body was literally falling apart. And I don't mean figuratively, I mean literally. Her organs on the inside, her nervous system, all kinds of things was going on. And nobody could figure out what it was. And her story is kind of as you're sharing yours, was somewhat kind of similar of what her mind was going through, and in the relationship, so forth and so on. Then I had the wife of a basketball player, Carlita Hodges. Her husband was Craig Hodges. And she talks about her story and the adversity that she faced going through and being abused and so forth and so on. And it was oh, man, God, I'm reading her book now. And then, again, I'm listening to your story this morning, and it's my God, people go through. And then knowing that I read from those two books to kick the show off this morning, and both of those passages were dealing with adversity and getting through. It's just, that's why I know there's a higher power. I don't care what anybody else say. There's someone beyond, there's God out there beyond us that's orchestrating these things. Because some of these things that happens, mere mortals, mere man, if it was left up to us, would not be happening. So there's no doubt in my mind there is God that is pulling the strings, that is putting all these things together, because there's no way in the world that the messages could line up so clear. They had absolutely nothing to do with each other than God knowing that I was going to have you on this show on the 31st of January, and the readings for the morning was going to be pretty much the exact same thing that we were talking about. So I'm going to share this. We're going to come back and finish listening to some more of the story, and I want to know, where did coming out of hiding come from? And that's what we're going to talk about when we come back. But don't you dare move unless you're on the social media sites, letting someone know that Kiamesha Harrison is on the air with me.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't seen your lap in months. And even more stuff. But still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Hi, my name is Stan Myers, and I'm here at FM 88.7. I do a jazz show called Just a Mood. And if you like the music, anything from Louis to Lester Bowie, I'm your man. That's Sunday afternoons, 3 to 6. Looking to hear from you, okay?
Welcome back to a Reading Circle double header. My guest in the second hour is Kiamesha Harrison, and her book is Coming Out of Hiding. And we were talking about some serious experience dealing in adversity because she's been through 2 major car accidents where bones have been broken and memory loss has occurred and having to relearn how to walk and be able to move again. And yet she still has come through. And during that time, particularly during her second accident, she actually wrote a book after being reminded of her writing skills from her godfather. And that book is Coming Out of Hiding. So where did Coming Out of Hiding come from, Kiamesha?
Just the reality that everyone around me really didn't know who I was. I hid behind so many different facades my whole life. Like even just before the accident, I knew what people expected of me. So when I was around those who expected anything, I was what they needed at that time. And it wasn't until I was sitting in a wheelchair in a dark room one night that I realized that nobody really knew who I was. They didn't know that days before my accident, I was on my face praying to God that I didn't want my family anymore.
Wow.
You know, I just kept saying, I was like, I don't want to be a wife. I don't want to be a mother right now. I just want to be me. You know, nobody knew that I had gone through things or that I had things I was still hiding behind, because now I had to put on this brave face of being a wife and mom and everything's great. And no, it wasn't great.
Right.
But, you know, we were having explosive arguments at home.
Right.
I was, you know, having thoughts of suicide. And, you know, I was not in a good place. And then after the accidents, you know, you try to be all things for all people. I guess that's the best way of putting it.
Right.
And I realized that I was being all things to everybody but me. You know, I wasn't giving myself the support that I needed. I wasn't putting myself in the position to be around the people that could help me. You know, one of the biggest things is that, you know, my minority families especially, therapy is a bad thing to them. They don't understand that it is okay for you to, you know, reach out and get somebody to work with you. And it wasn't until after my second accident that I actually started going to therapy for PTSD, which I just didn't even think applied to me, but it did. And not just from the accidents, from life itself.
Exactly, because I'm looking at your table of contents. I see chapter 1 is back in the day. Chapter 2, and then there was love. Chapter 3, broken in a million pieces. Chapter 4, look where we are now. Chapter 5, rebuilding and tearing down. 6, believe it or not, more issues. And then chapter 7, new focus. And that's the way, for those in the listening audience, that's the way the book Coming Out of Hiding is broken down. Back in the day, then there was love, broken in a million pieces. Look where we are now, rebuilding and tearing down, more issues and new focus. So clearly I could see like you're walking through the journey, if you will, or you're walking us through the journey.
Right.
So,
and
Yeah, go ahead, because I was going to say, I know you said rereading it was actually worse than putting it down the first time.
Oh, it was. It really was. And it wasn't because, oh, God, I've been through so many horrific things. It was, oh, my God, did I really handle it that way? Like, did I really do that? Like, oh, my God, how did I even end up in that situation, especially now that I've got, my oldest daughter's in her second year of nursing school, and I'm now watching my children deal with their relationships, and I'm still evolving, by the way. I haven't by no means got this licked. I'm still learning.
Right.
And, God has a sense of humor that he filled my house with girls.
I'm in the same boat. That's same here. Exact same thing happened with me. I have 4 daughters as well. All 4. Couldn't buy a boy.
Oh, my goodness. I have one boy, but I have a granddaughter now, too.
All right.
And I sat down one day. I'm like, God, girls don't like me. I'm like, why would you give me? I remember when I went into labor with my oldest, I thought that I could Jedi mind trick my body into having a boy. I bought all these boy things. I even kept blue flowers in my house. And when she came out, I looked at the nurse. I'm like, no, you're wrong. Check again. So there's got to be a boy. Because, when you're growing up, your relationship to the same sex, it really does kind of shape your opinion.
That's correct.
So, and it's like now, oh, my goodness, between the hair and the relationships and the gossip that you have to endure when you're in school, I just kept looking at them. I'm like, God, are you serious? I hated high school when I went. I don't want to. And I just kept saying, I'm like, I was horrible at this as a girl. I was like, God is going to give me none of boys. I can be a boy. I can be durable. I can be a boy. And as soon as I was like, how did my house get filled with barrettes and crying and I had to take a step back, and I watch them, and I watch how they absorb the world around them.
Right.
And that's when it hit me. I was like, oh my goodness, this cycle is going to continue even by the time I'm dead and gone buried, and have been absorbed into the earth. This cycle is going to continue beyond me if I don't get control of it.
Right.
I had to start addressing the fact that I was depressed. And even when people are like, oh, you have every right to be, wait, not really.
Right.
Not
Absolutely.
really. No, you don't. Because the thing about it is that if you don't refocus, the world around you won't either.
Correct.
They see you how you paint you.
Correct.
And for me, I became so absorbed in my life. I was like, oh, okay, I can do this, I can do that, but nope, I can't do that because that'll hurt. It became to a point where someone said something to me one day, and my son, who was still barely, he was a runt at the time, he jumped out in front of me and shielded me from a conversation. And I sat down that night and I cried about that. I'm like, everybody's like, oh, that's so cute. I'm like, no, it's not. He can't fight my battles for me. He can't make my legs work. He can't do the things that I need done. I have to do them. And I have to take a step back and realize that if I don't address them now, if I don't stop hiding behind all of the things that I've gone through, my children are destined to be right in the same position with me. They're destined to become the statistic that everybody sees us as minorities as it is. And I live in a majority, white community.
Right.
My son is like the only black diver in my region. Everybody's like, oh, he's over 6 feet tall and play basketball. I'm like, no, he prefers to be in the water. We're good.
Yeah, right.
There's nothing wrong with the chocolate Michael Phelps. We can do that. He wears the cowboy boots, the hat, the whole shebang. And I tell people every day, I'm like, listen, I'm so proud of my children.
Correct.
Because they have all identified who they are. And they're pushing toward, the other side of it. Whereas I was stuck. And it was because I did not get the help that I needed before the accident.
Right.
And just people are still, they're fascinated when I tell them I would not change a thing. Really, I wouldn't. I wouldn't take my accidents back because, number one, the relationships that I built with people as a result,
right.
I wouldn't want to lose that. But I also wouldn't want to lose the person that I'm evolving into.
Right.
I don't think, had my accident not happened and some of the paths that I saw myself on at the time, if I'd have gone in that direction, I don't think I would have liked who I was.
Well,
I know for a fact I wouldn't.
You know that old saying, God moves in mysterious ways. And
that's an understatement.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of times what we see as horrific or as bad, like you just said, and somebody would listen to you and say, what? When you say, I wouldn't trade it, even as horrific or as terrible as it was, what came out of me as a result of that, I wouldn't trade it. But sometimes, because there's that thing in the Bible where it says, what you plan for evil, God used for good. And that sounds like, as you're describing this, what many would see as something that was terrible or evil wound up being used for good. I'm reading here, like in the first line, the first paragraph or so of your book. It says, life is funny. It has an amazing way of taking you on twists and turns that never quite seem rational or fair. We, being so small in the universe, have no choice but either adapt or perish in all the chaos. Many of us scream quietly because we have no idea how to survive through it all. What would happen if the weak grew stronger and realized their voice had the strength to move mountains? What if the pitiful and forgotten realized they could matter even if just to one person? Shelley was just that person. She lived a life of fear, poverty, loss, and serious dysfunction. But underneath all that, she was loved, even at a distance. That's the first paragraph in the book, Coming Out of Hiding. Back in the day, that was the first paragraph there. And again, a lot of times and clearly when things are going well, you're not hoping for something to go bad.
Right.
But at the same time, it is like in the mindset, which I'm not going to sit here and try to tell anybody it's easy to do. I wouldn't even try to fool anybody to say, oh, yeah, you're just going to be happy and gay and thrilled and sunshine. No, you're not going to be that. But as Kiamesha was saying, it really is how do you journey through it? How do you process through it? Because the whole thing is like, okay, we got the trick is not to get stuck. The trick is to go through. It's kind of like, whenever you're going through hell, go through it. Don't get stuck in it. Yep. And a lot of us tend to, and some of it is just natural. Like you said, it's real easy to do that pity party.
Right. It's oh, my goodness. I had the table set and everything. I had everything. I was cooking for my pity party every day. And it wasn't until my physical therapist, who I'm still convinced is a machine and not a real person, she said to me, she said, listen, there are 15 things that I'm going to get you to do before this is over.
Right.
And I was like, no, I'm stuck at one. Let's just work on one. And the more she pushed me, the more she motivated me, I admit, the more I began to hate her. I'm like, okay, I don't want to deal with that right now. And she said, the thing is that, okay, yeah, you can get to step one, but the glory is in getting to step two. And so on and so forth, is realizing that you have to get to the other side of it or it will kill you.
Right.
Literally and figuratively, it will kill you if you don't. And when she put it that way, I really looked at it and I'm like, she's right. If I just sit in this chair and watch the world go by, everything about me that I loved will die. It will die off. Everything about me that I'd love to transfer to my children, all of that would just die, and I would become somebody that I don't like. And then, I just kept looking at my children, and I kept saying, okay, God, I get it. And I realized something. I am hard-headed. I'm hard-headed. I'm complacent. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, God knew he had to throw me out a window to get me closer to the door.
That sounds like another go. Wait. That's another one I got to put on Twitter. Wait a minute now. Oh, my goodness. I got that one. See, I tell you, every time one of them leaps out at me, I have to get it on the site here. Here we go. All right. God knew he had to throw me out of a window to get me closer to the door. Wow. See, that's deep. I like that. See, those kind of quotes.
But really think about it. When you're at your lowest point in a relationship or a job or anything like that. At the time when you're praying for God to fix that.
That's
situation.
right. That's right. Because it's like that old thing, be careful what you ask for, you just may get it. And surely when you're dealing with God, whatever you ask for, you don't know how he's going to give it to you. Mm-hmm. And so you have to almost be like, all right, you know what? In some kind of crazy way, I did ask for that. I didn't expect to have to do it like this, but. And
right. And it's the same thing that we're constantly beating into our kids. Oh, why don't you just admit that you did it? Why are you trying to hide behind that?
Right.
Well, we do it all the time.
Oh, yes, we do.
Mind you, I knew my relationship was no good at the time. But after my accident, I fought like hell, to hang on to it.
Right.
And it wasn't until my physical therapist got me to step 5 that I realized it wasn't working out and that I needed to let go in order to get somewhere else.
Right.
Just like I said, when you're going through something, you're not saying, okay, God, get me through this so we can start the new path. No, we're saying, God, fix this. I need this to be this way. And he'll give you just that. Okay, well, fine. I'll give it to you. Now what?
Right.
Like, what are you going to do now? What's the next step? And that's just the thing, is looking beyond the situation to see the next step. Like, okay, well, fine, this is what you want. Well, what are you going to do with it?
That's right.
You have to be able to answer those questions for yourself, not for other people. And I tell my children every day, it's like my mother doesn't understand why I keep getting 2-story houses.
Uh-huh.
Why don't you get a house with a bedroom downstairs? And I thought about it. I'm like, no, because if I do that, I'll never go upstairs.
Right.
Or I'll never come downstairs. I'll be stuck up in my room. And for me, in order to get to the next thing, I have to be able to look down the stairs and say, well, the only way I'm getting a glass of juice is if I get down there and get it myself.
Right. So that it's almost like that forces you to have to do it.
It really does. And,
Mm-hmm.
The thing about life and the relationships and just everything is just absorbing what you can and seeing where the next thing will take you.
Right.
And coming out of hiding for me was, all the secrets that I held on to when I was younger, I had to shed them. I tell people every day, I have nothing to hide.
Right.
I don't.
Obviously.
Right. I have nothing to hide. And at first my mother was really worried. She's like, you're putting so much into this book. I just don't want you to, get judged. And I'm like, but even if I am, what difference does it make?
Right.
Everybody's going to get judged one way or the other.
One way or the other, right. It's kind of like for good or bad. Either way, somebody's always going to be saying something. That's right.
Exactly. And I tell my godfather all the time, I'm like, the sound of disdain in his voice that night, I will never forget it. I mean, he hung up on me like I had just told him that I was a junkie and had 12 fathers of all my children. And I remember at first, for like an hour, I sat in my room in the dark, staring at my laptop saying, I cannot believe he just hung up on me. I'm like, did he not hear me when I said I was in a wheelchair? No?
No, he heard you say, I don't. No. What he heard you say was, I don't have the time.
Right.
That's what he heard you say.
It wasn't until I actually replayed the conversation. I'm like, oh, my God, he must think I'm a failure. And that night, before I even had 2 chapters, I started researching publishers.
Right.
I started researching what the process was. And it just poured out of me. And I knew at that moment, I'm like, oh, my goodness, he was absolutely right. This is what I needed. And I know he's known me since I was 12. And he knew that I always got through something by writing it down. It always helped me to refocus. It always helped me to evolve. And it wasn't until I started writing every day. And that's why I love ghostwriting for other people, is giving their words, their life, the words that it needs to lift them up and carry them off somewhere else. Because people really underestimate the power of a conversation.
Absolutely. Words are so powerful. I mean, I say that to folks all the time. That's why you really do. And every now and again, I'll fall into the negativity words as well. And sometimes my wife will remind me what I always say. Like, why are you going to say that and put that out there? And you're the one that always talking about words are powerful, because it's real easy to slip into the negative feed. But that's why you always have to affirm things in the positive. You always have to speak things the way that you want them to be, even though they may not be, because words are powerful. That's why earlier we talked about the mindset. She was saying in the first accident, She was like, hey, I'm alive. This is great. Those were the words that were coming out of her. The second accident, there was a whole different set of words that were coming out that brought on a whole different healing results. So, I mean, people don't believe it, Kiamesha, but the words we think, say, write. Matter of fact, when you connect your spoken word with your written word, that's even more powerful. Because once you put it down on paper, it goes up another notch.
And you know, one thing that, I'm constantly reminding my children is like, listen, you can't take it back.
Right.
You know, once you throw it out there, and especially the larger the audience when you do, they'll make sure you can't take it back.
That's
correct. They got to remind you about it every day.
Of course. That's why social media is so powerful as well. Once you put it online, it's there.
It's permanent. It's permanent.
That's right.
And it's so funny because I'm only 40, and I promise you, I can't stand when I catch myself saying when I was younger. Well, it's true. I think that if we had social media when I was younger,
right?
Oh my goodness, it would have been a catastrophe. It would have been a catastrophe. And I said, it's what it is that people are now hiding behind a keyboard.
Yes.
With all of their flaws and issues, and they are taking all of their pain and they're projecting it onto other people.
That's right.
And we're so absorbed, like first of all, reality television is just out of control.
Yes, it is. I refuse to watch reality. I've never watched it. I refuse to watch it.
I can't do it.
I got enough reality as it is. I don't need to sit there and watch somebody else's reality. But
not as good reality.
But
it
is like way out of control.
And I tell my children all the time, I'm like, listen, do you realize that woman who is now naked on TV,
right,
and that is not even really an exaggeration,
right,
is naked on TV, she's going to grow older, right, possibly have a family,
right,
possibly become somebody's CEO
right,
or, homemaker. But guess what? Every time somebody wants to humiliate her,
that's right,
or to do something to try to get at her, all they've got to do is point and click, and they can dig up everything about her life.
That's correct.
And make it out there. Like she'll never have a history of politics or anything like that because of the fact that she allowed, this fascination that this generation has with negativity,
absolutely,
dictate her life. And I love the fact that when we were younger, we fought to get outside.
Right.
We fought to
go outside and play. That's correct.
Right. We looked forward to a sunny day, and even when it was drizzling, we were like, "No, Mama, it's
right.
No, I'm good. You're shaking. No, I want to play."
That's right. That's right.
Being able to actually say that everybody in my little, because I lived in a complex,
right,
all of us would be downstairs playing,
right.
But like here in this area I live in, half the places in Texas don't even have sidewalks.
Right.
And that's crazy to me, but I realize it's because they don't go for walks.
Right.
They don't go outside. One thing I miss about New York is the subway. People don't understand why. But it's because you're interacting.
Right.
You're out, you're meeting people, you're catching a glimpse at someone you find attractive, you're smiling, you're taking in the air, you're exercising also. You're doing all these things that cause you to get out of your comfort zone because you don't have a choice.
That's right.
Whereas, now you just grab your car, you sit in your car, you order your food through the window, you don't ever actually get out.
Right.
You're doing all these things, and these people are hiding behind keyboards and laptops and phones, and they're saying these hurtful things. And I remember when the reality TV thing got started, I kept saying, people are not going to be happy until they're naked on TV. And what do we have now? Naked dating.
Darn really? Naked. Yeah. See, and that must be a cable show because I don't have cable, so that must be one that's on cable. But seriously, naked dating.
When I was in the hospital last week, there is a new show coming on. I'm not going to mention the channel.
Got to be cable because I know it's not regular TV. So
yeah, it's cable.
Okay.
And apparently, because I tuned it out because I thought it was just so absurd. Apparently, these couples are coming on there to get therapy about their relationships or their intimate lives, and they actually have this grayed out box on the stage, and they send the couple in there, and they're expected to further consummate their relationship.
Now, see, we have gone to the height of ridiculousness. I need to do a couple of things because we've crossed into the 8 o'clock hour. But that's every time I think we've gotten to the height or the climax or the pinnacle.
Oh no, we take it further.
It goes to another level. Now every time I think we've got to the silliest thing I've ever heard, somebody tells me something sillier. Now, if that's not this, I mean, I thought it was bad enough with Jerry Springer, with folks on there trying to, or whatever, Maury Povich or whatever they are, where they trying to figure out baby daddy and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was the silliest thing going. But now you're telling me they're actually going to be on TV, behind some box, supposed to be consummating an intimate relationship.
And I just sat there and I said, "Oh, thank goodness I don't have cable." And I just kept thinking, I have a prepubescent, I call him prepubescent, but he's 18.
Right.
And all I keep, I'm that mom that people worry about. When I tell my children up front, listen, go out and make friends.
Right.
But listen, they can't come into my house with their pants sagging.
Right.
Their skirts can't be so
That's
short.
right.
I can see what they ate.
That's right.
There's not going to be any cussing in my house.
That's right.
And if there's a sleepover, I have a bucket.
Right.
Nice little wooden basket.
Right.
All social media things get put in that basket at 9:30. You get it back the next day.
Right.
Because guess what? Who do you need to talk to at 1 a.m?
Right.
No one.
Right.
You should be doing something else.
Right.
And one thing I loved is that I thought that my children would rebel against it.
Right.
But now it's funny listening to the stories. My son, he doesn't have that problem. He's a cowboy all day. But like with my daughter, her friends will come here. And one of them, she's spending the night. And I was out, that evening. But, they'd already arranged it. And when I came in, she's sleeping on the sofa, but I could see parts of her that I didn't want to see.
Right.
So I kindly walked over to my daughter and tapped her, and she says, "Why are you yelling at me?" I'm like, "Because that's your friend."
Why are you yelling
and when
at me?
I tell you, when I woke up the next day, this poor little girl, she had on a turtleneck, a pair of sweatpants. And she looked at me, she said, "Mama, look, I'm clothed. I got my clothes on." I said, "Exactly." See, that's the thing. I said, now let them, you have to get to a point where you set standards for yourself. Don't wait for other people.
No question. And one of the things I share with kids, and I just talked to a child yesterday and said this one, anybody that lets a child do what they want to do, when they want to do it, and how they want to do it, they don't care about you. The people that are setting standards for you, who are constantly challenging you, who are trying to get you to do it, that's the people who love you. But any parent that lets you do what you want to do, they could care less about you. And I make that very clear with the kids that I work with. If your parent lets you do what you want to do, I hate to tell you this, I don't want to break it to you, but if they're letting you at 12, you at 10, do what you want to do, they don't love you. They don't care about you.
They don't care. They're waiting for you to find your own way and get out of their way.
Now, see, back in the day, that day you were talking about in the complex and going outside in the drizzle and all that, you had to be in the house when the street lights came on or the first time.
And your neighbor.
That's right. The neighbor could chastise you, everything, all of that.
Yoke you up, bring you back to your house by your ear. She said something bad.
Then you got it again at home from your parents.
You got
That's
it
right.
Again.
That's
and
right.
One thing I loved is that my grandmother didn't have to ask us who was in our house.
Right.
My neighbor already told her by the time she walked inside.
That's right.
Well, so-and-so was by there. The door was open. They was doing such.
That's right.
And, when you're young, you're like, goodness, they're so strict. But now that I have my own family, I'm like,
you get to see
absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely. And it's discouraging that something can happen to your children just playing in your little community, and that people are so jaded now.
They won't even say a word. That's right. Won't say a word.
Won't say a thing. And that's just not life. That is not life.
No, it's not.
It's not realistic, because guess what? There's always somebody watching.
That's right.
Whether they're watching go through a recovery or breakdown, whatever, there's always somebody watching.
Right.
And you've got to become conscious of that.
That's right. So, okay, let me share this, and then we continue with our conversation. No. The conversation is good. That's why I haven't been able to go to it myself. So stay right there. Don't anyone dare move.
Starting this Friday, your favorite DJs from the past are reclaiming the airwaves.
Hit Radio 88.7 WPSC FM Wayne.
Tune in to hear the songs and voices that defined 88.7 across the decades.
Laser Hits, the summer of '89. PSC.
Alumni Takeover Weekend, only on
Laser Hits.
Hit Radio, the spirit of North Jersey.
The only alternative.
Brave New Radio.
WPSC FM 88.7, Wayne, New Jersey.
Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network. Brave New Radio.
Straight from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center, here's your local forecast.
Well, we've actually moved back up a degree or so. We're actually up to 10.1 now. I think we were at 9.9 whenever I gave it in the 7 o'clock hour. We're moving up to a high today of 23. We're going to have plenty of sunshine, but we're also going to have some winds as well. It's going to be cold, mostly clear tonight, low of 16. Tomorrow, Super Bowl Sunday, high of 34, low of 22. Cloudy skies during the day. We're expecting snow in the evening, expected to become heavy at times overnight, a low of 22. Over Sunday night, expect 5 to 8 inches. And then into Monday, another 3 to 5 inches. So we have a mix of wintry precipitation in the morning on Monday, then periods of snow expected in the afternoon, a high of 21, low of 1. Well, it moved up from 0 to 1 over the last hour. And then on Tuesday, sunshine along with some cloudy intervals, high of 22, low of 9. Mostly clear skies on Tuesday night. Wednesday, cloudy, high of 37 with a low of 23. That rounds out the forecast brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. All right, we are in an extended version of the Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. And again, we have been having an absolute blast as I've been talking with Kiamesha Harrison. And we're talking about a whole bunch of different things, and all of them connect. So I need to share just one more little bit of it, because there's certain things, Kiamesha, we have to do for the FCC, for the Federal Commission of Communications, certain things in radio and TV that we have to do. So I'm doing all those things while I can, because I hate to break the conversation, because we be having a good time. And the stuff is, for those in the listening audience, it is so critical that you're understanding the messages and the lessons and the morals of the story as we're talking here, because it truly is an inspiration. So I'm going to share this bit of information during this time frame, and then again in another 5 or 10 minutes or so we'll break again, and by that time allow Kiamesha the chance to promote all she wants in terms of how they can get the book, so forth and so on, and then we'll be on our way. So do this and then come right back to our conversation.
Think carrying 10 or 20 pounds of extra weight isn't much? We went to a park, handed 10 and 20-pound sandbags to people aged 45 to 60, and asked if we could follow them around.
10 pounds makes a big difference. Oh, I definitely felt it in my knees.
A few extra pounds each year can cause joint pain and lead to serious chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease. Wouldn't you like to drop that weight and stop picking up more? Visit hhs.gov/1 pound at a time to find out how. Obesity happens 1 pound at a time. So does preventing it. Brought to you by HHS and NIH.
Welcome back to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. My guest this morning is Kiamesha Harrison, and we're talking about her book, Coming Out of Hiding, as well as we're talking about a plethora of things. We're talking about a myriad of things in terms of just life in general, because life throws us curveballs. I mean, there's some instances and things in life that if someone had told me was going to happen to me, matter of fact, I did say, no, it's not. And it turned out it did, because I ultimately suffered through a divorce that at the time when my previous wife, my former wife, and I were dating, and a lot of people, again, we were young, just like you were talking about the 20 and so forth and so on. People were saying, you all are so young, yada, 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 it probably won't last. And we were determined, oh, yes, it is. Oh, and then 20 years later, along that way, it did fall apart, unfortunately. But had someone told me, which, that you're going to go through a divorce, I know I'm not. I know that's not going to happen to me. No. Right. Definitely till death do us part. Things happen. I shared with you again about my aunt who had the accident. She was slammed into the side of a wall. That was another curveball for the family. There's been other things that, and in retrospect, I mean, in hindsight, and then listening to other people, the few things that I have gone to really in relativity, when you compare them side by side, if that's the worst that's going to happen to me, that's nowhere close to some of the worst things or some of the things that's happened to other people. And, we deal with life every day. And as we get older, life tends to throw more curveballs, and life is life. But the thing is, how do you handle the curveball that's thrown at you? That's when it's all said and done. What makes the difference, as Kiamesha was saying earlier, whether you just sit in the dark all day at a pity party, or do you realize, you know what? This curveball is thrown at me, doggone it, I'm going to learn how to hit curveballs. Or other people say you make lemonade out of lemons. However way you want to put it, of turning something that's meant for bad into good. That's what we're talking about this morning. And what Kiamesha was saying, that as she was going through that process, she really had an opportunity to reflect upon and learn about who she really was. And she put that down on paper. And it's a novel. It's kind of like one of those, I kind of gather from it that it's one of those like factions, like it's part fiction, part reality, part real.
Well, actually what happened was that, as I said, it started off as my journal. So it was actually a much larger. And after we started going through the editing process, the legal department for my publisher got a little nervous because, I did name the driver of my vehicle and so on and so forth. So they were worried that we would run into some issues in that area. So they asked me to make it partly fiction. So I changed around a few names and locations just to kind of keep it fair.
Right.
It's funny because the people that I did mention actually were offended that I didn't mention them in the book after we finished. But it was just, we just changed a couple things around, and I, just to be fair, to make sure that I didn't want to slander anyone. But like I said, the interesting thing was that everybody was so worried about the book because they thought that I was going to reflect on the things that were going on with them in conjunction with what was going on with me.
Right.
But it isn't at all. I mean, even with the driver, he and I, I'm going to know him for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I didn't say that book is about me. It's about how I handled it. It has nothing to do with how he handled it or how, other things, anyone did anything. It was me, and it was because that was my truth to tell. And there were things that I did take out because they did reflect on someone else's, issues. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, well, it's not my truth to tell, that's theirs. So we went back to an editor. I took a few things out. So I told them they can go ahead and market it as fiction. But for the most part, if you to know me, my husband actually gets frustrated on occasion. He's like, everybody knows about your accident. I'm like, well, it's not exactly like I admit, it happened. And I used to tell myself all the time, I'm like, oh, I'm not good with women. Most of my friends are male, and, me and women don't have anything to talk about.
Right.
Well, it's because I had that attitude that we did everything to talk about.
Right.
And, and I never saw myself as someone that someone else could get some motivation from. I never saw myself as anybody that would be supportive and helpful of other people because I was so selfish and single-minded at the time. But after my accident, the more I went through it and the more people that I met, it hit me. I'm like, well, had this accident not happened, would I be able to relate to them?
Right.
Probably not. Like I said, I don't regret it at all. I've forgiven everybody from the onset because for some reason that was one piece of baggage I refused to carry.
Right.
Was holding a grudge and thinking that, it's someone's fault. No, it wasn't anybody's fault. It happens. Nobody left the house that day with, that determination. And I mean, they were in the car with me. So what can I do? I mean, now granted, I thought God had a really tricky sense of humor. That out of 8 people involved, I was the only one that broke a bone. No one even broke a nail.
Yeah, and again, your story and my aunt's story is kind of because the other 3 people, while they sustained some injuries, it was nowhere close to hers. She was the only one that took that impact hit directly into the wall. And the other 3,
I know that.
Right. The other 3, they got hurt, but nowhere close, nowhere in the realm. I mean, at one point, the doctors didn't even expect her to live. And matter of fact,
yes, I got that too.
The only thing that had really kept her alive was that we had people from around the country praying for her. And the doctor said, we don't quite understand why you're still here. And we knew, because we know everybody that knew her, and she was very popular. Everybody that knows her was actually praying for her at the same time. But she's gone through the blindness. She's gone through, and the accident happened over like 14, 15 years ago now. And still there's some residuals. But she's come along. She's healed as well. She's done well. So I know exactly through you all, because it hasn't happened to me, but the fact that you all can still keep moving, that's a testament. And back to what you were saying, you never know. That's why it's so important for reading and people to, like you said, therapy and help and all that. whenever someone reads your story, you don't know for that person how it might say, you know what, I was really down in the dumps, but after reading Kiamesha's story, I can do this thing.
Right. And you know, it's so funny, like when you said that, you know, she still has residual issues. I do too. And it's so funny because at first I got down on myself. I'm like, goodness, I can't get past this. And I'm like, well, because God knows I'm arrogant, and he knows that if there wasn't any residual, I would just keep stepping right past this and pretend like it didn't happen, and we'll be right back where we need to be. And it's good that I have the residual because I would forget. Because we're quick to put things in the back of our mind and pretend like they're not there. And I know me. If I was, all it would have taken was for me to just get all bandages up, get up, walk out, and keep moving. Oh, yeah, that'd have been a problem. So it was good that I had the residual. And I think that in a lot of ways, too, like I've told my family, is that I think my second accident, that wasn't necessarily, that was to break me down.
Right.
I thought the first one was God saying, oh, hey, look how big you handled that. You're awesome, girl. No, the first accident, I think, was for other people. I think that there were some realities that the people around me had to face.
Right.
And I think it was part of a pruning process. And then the second accident, oh, that was for me all day.
Right.
Because, you know, I made a big stink about, oh, look, this has happened to me. I'm up walking around. See, hey, look, there we go. Look, I'm moving around. And all of a sudden I started becoming arrogant, and I absorbed the situation as if I, you know, like I was made out of Teflon. And I woke up in the car the second time. I was like, okay, God, I get it. Can we try to work on our communication? Because, you know, it's not necessary. If you keep slamming me into stuff, we can get past it, you know, another way. And I tell people the longest, I'm like, no, I'm not a good passenger. We don't need to go anywhere. I'm good. You know, just, y'all come visit me. I'm not getting back in my car.
Oh, my goodness.
But it's just the reality that, just like you said, if someone would have told you when you got married the first time that you would have ended in divorce, you would have said, no, that's impossible. You know, you just scoffed at that because at that moment, your heart and your mind are telling you something different. Like if someone had told me that I would have been a single parent of 4 children and have a grandchild while I'm pushing my daughter through school, I would have laughed at you. Right. And I also would have locked my daughter in a room. But I would have never thought for a moment that those things would have happened. I would have never thought that I would have gotten divorced or, you know, and that I would have even come to Texas. You would have told me that. I'm like, what would I live in Texas for? None of that would have made sense. But realistically, I think that every tragedy gets you a little bit closer to the mindset you need to be in. Right. And the only way you thoroughly absorb it is that you've got to get past the hardest part, which is the acceptance.
Correct.
You know, and that's one of the biggest problems many people have. Like, you know, when they lose a loved one, they will not focus on the loss.
Right.
In the way that they need to so that they can get anywhere else. Like, you know, my father passed away, you know, at the age of 53 in 2007. And I remember we all were just so shocked because it was really sudden. Right. And we were all just so shocked, and we all just kept, you know, I just kept hanging on to the day that I found out that he was gone. And, you know, in retrospect, after we got the autopsy, we found that it was cancer, which basically had taken over his whole body. No one knew it. And, you know, but it's like after we started reflecting on things, after we really took a step back, we kind of see that we had indicators before that we really just weren't looking at and things like that. But, you know, for the longest, I dwelled on the loss, not the good thing that could come out of it, not the relationships that I could build because of it. I dwelt on the loss so much so that I wouldn't go to the cemetery. I just wasn't, because that would have made it real for me. And I wasn't ready to do that. It took me 4 years.
Wow.
You know, and that's the same thing with any type of mind-crippling situation. Right. Is that when you are ready to deal with it, you will.
Right.
But the sad part is a lot of us, such as myself, have to be pushed into dealing with it.
Right.
Because otherwise, you know, and granted, let me tell you, pain disorders are real. You know, all of the, you know, the things that people go through, they're real. Even if it's not real to you, it's their journey.
Correct.
You know, it's very real to them. And it's hard to vocalize what's going on with you if you're talking to someone that you know good and well has no idea. They've never been through it. They don't know anybody who has. So a lot of people hear stories and think that they're, fantasized a little bit, and people kind of push parts of it away because they don't want to face it in the conversation either. But for you, it's real, and that's what you have to deal with, is the personal reality of it. Okay, where are you going to be? What do you want to do? Do you want to stay here? You want to stay in the chair and never go back outside again?
Right.
Do you want to constantly take so much medication that you can't even drive a car?
Right.
Or, do you want to be so dependent on other people that you are not enjoying life?
Right.
The answer to all those things, of course, you say a resounding no until it happens to you.
Absolutely. Now, I tell you what, how can folks get a copy of Coming Out of Hiding?
Well, I have been so blessed. I'm actually on just about every site possible. I'm on 56 different websites. You can go onto Amazon, which I found is the easiest way to purchase the book. Amazon has it, Barnes & Nobles, Borders, Tower Records, Target. They all, will sell copies of it. But, I even tell people all the time they can actually find my page on Facebook, or they can just type in the name of my book and the Facebook page will come up. And, I'll be glad to autograph copies, send them out. Because for me, I didn't write the book so much so to get paid for it.
Right.
I wrote the book because I knew I had to
share the story. Correct.
And it was for me, and it was just so that I can put it out there, and that I have no more excuses to hide anything.
So, is it downloadable? Is it available on the Kindles?
It is actually, yes. You can go to Google Play; they have it, as well as 2 other sites, and I'm sorry they kind of escaped me because they snuck up on me with it.
Is it on
they
Amazon?
Do have digital copies.
Is it downloadable through Amazon as well?
I believe it is now, yes. And it's available on Kindle. Any device possible, you can download it. And we made it abbreviated because a lot of people can't read like large books. It was over 200 pages, and I managed to get it down to 88. I took out the things that I felt would become a little too controversial for other people.
Okay.
And we just mainly focused on me. And it's available out there. And like I said, people, if they want to get in touch with me through any of the sites, they can. There's actually, they can even leave comments. I urge people to write whatever feedback, good or bad, about the book as well, because that way it keeps the conversation going, and it allows everybody to really, take focus to the situation. So if they do buy the book, please, by all means, any reviews, whether good or bad, I take it with a grain of salt. If you could go ahead and post those, that would be great too.
Well, I tell you what, we've come to the end of our time together, but boy, it has gone quickly and it has been informative. The book is Coming Out of Hiding by Kiamesha Harrison, and she just told you the various ways that you can get a copy of it. Like I said, I'm about finished with Carlita Hodges' book. I finished earlier in the week Nika's book, and I know when I start reading yours, it's just, they are so powerful when folks start sharing like their story, because it's that old thing, like you cannot have a testimony without a test, and all of you have had the tests, so your testimony is powerful. And it will help somebody else that regardless of what they're going through, they can say, okay, if they can get through this, if God brought them through that, he can bring me through this. And if they got through it and they were able to push forward, what I'm going through is not as bad as what they've been through. Because that's the other thing, too, that no matter how bad we think we have it, somebody else has it worse than we do.
We do. And, I think that it's crazy that you become so absorbed in your own life sometimes that you can't see that part.
Right.
Like, I actually used to think when I was younger that everybody's life was so much better than mine. Look, they smile every day. Do you see that?
Right.
Like, they're smiling all the time. And you don't think that other people are struggling. People know how to suffer in silence.
Right. That's correct.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really look
I
forward
wish you
to
nothing
this.
but the best. I will certainly be reading Coming Out of Hiding. I've enjoyed our conversation immensely, and see, things happen for a reason. So I know we got snowed out last Saturday, but it turned out actually being even better this Saturday. So I thank you so much for rising early. I wish you nothing but the best in your journey. If you're writing something else, another project, you want to come back on, it's just a matter of an email, and we'll get another date for you.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. Try to stay warm.
I know. We got to try to stay warm because I'm telling you, I'm not a cold weather person. I'm glad to be alive, but me and cold weather, I always say there's a warm weather climate in my future, a year-round warm weather climate. I don't know when it's going to be, but back to those powerful words again. But we will do the best we can to stay warm. And thank you again.
All right. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Bye now.
Thank you.